What happened this week in the nation's capital brought to mind another event from Maine history.
It's when an angry mob stormed the State House and a Civil War hero ended it all by standing his ground.
Here's News Center Maine's Rosalind Flaherty.
As the country comes to terms with what happened at the U.S. Capitol earlier this week, it's time to go back in history to when there was a struggle at the Maine Capitol.
The countout crisis happened very similar to what's going on today.
Former Maine Governor Joshua Chamberland was called to Augusta in 1880 after there was a dispute about who was the newly elected governor.
This just caused an uproar in Augusta. They couldn't solve it quick enough, and the government of Augusta basically dissolved.
Troy Ancona is the site manager at the Joshua L. Chamberland Museum in Brunswick. He says Chamberlain, who was the commander of the Maine militia at the time, was asked to take charge and calm down the so-called mob that had formed at the Capitol.
He took his responsibilities of protecting the assets of the government, and for 12 days was, in a sense, an interim military governor, is what some authors have called him. 12 days later, things were really starting to heat up. There was threats on his life. There was threats on various other people in government.
Larissa Vigu-Picard is the executive director of the Pejepscot History Center. She says Chamberlain received this letter from U.S. Senator James Blaine asking him to bring in the Maine militia.
But Chamberlain wrote back to him and said, let's put the brakes on. I'm going to try to just put your trust in me. I'm going to try to keep the peace.
Both she and Ancona say that's exactly what Chamberlain did.
He came out melodramatic. You got to take this for what it's worth. What actually happened, but he unbuttoned his coat and says, I've given my life before, I'm going to give my life now. I'm going to see this thing through and make sure it's done right. So if you're going to kill me now. Supposedly there was veterans in the crowd, and one of them, went to his defense, and the situation diffused, and he said the crowd melted away.
The Supreme Court made a decision on the election. Vigu-Picard says if Chamberlain knew what happened at the U.S. Capitol, she says he would be horrified.
Obviously, as somebody who was protecting the State House during this crisis in 1880, he felt, it was very important to uphold the rule of law, to be calm, to talk with one another and not take up arms immediately.
A lesson in leadership in a time of crisis. Rosalind Flaherty, News Center, Maine.